Hello there, Ben Bowers, the Spirit Specialist, and I'm here today to talk to you about a brand new release from one of my favourite new distilleries, Lochlea. But this is actually one of their first releases of a cask strength bottling. So this is Lochlea Cask Strength Batch 1. So as you can imagine, it's got the number 1 on it, which means it's incredibly in demand because people want to sit on it and make loads of money on it. So this particular bottle I have not even opened yet. You'll still see the plastic on the top. And that is because I am going to do a tasting early next year at the time of recording. So January, February 2024, because we're in 23 now, which will include this along with the second crop of their seasonal releases and anything else that might come out. Because, so I am filming this the day after release, so it's 1st of June 2023. This was launched on Wednesday, 31st of May, but I had a few bits and pieces to do yesterday, so I never got the chance to do the video. But last Friday, I actually did a tasting event with John Campbell, who's the master blender, rather than master distiller, and Patrick, I think it's Dupuy, I think is his surname. Patrick, if you're watching, I do apologise for absolutely obliterating your surname. But John and Patrick joined me online because John was in Calgary at the time. So he dialed in for about half an hour from a hotel in Calgary. And we went through the first crop. So this was the first release, our barley, and then the first of the 4 seasonal releases. Now, I actually have a couple of packs left over. So at the time of recording, I decanted the remainder. There are not many, but we still have, who is that? Drilling or something outside, incredibly noisy if that's picked up, sorry. I have a pack of the inaugural releases, a year in review. So in here, you will have a miniature of first release and the our barley and the seasonal releases. It was fascinating to go through one after the other to kind of look at the context of the first release and then go to the our barley and then the differences between the various seasonal editions. And you won't miss out if you do get this pack. So this pack is 25 quid, which was exactly the same price as what it was for the tasting. And I've recorded the tasting for people that couldn't make it, who can drink along at their leisure. So I've actually put the link of the YouTube. It's a private YouTube link. So if you're on the YouTube channel watching this and you're looking for the tasting, unless you have the link, you're not actually going to be able to watch it because it was basically exclusively for the people that did the tasting. Or if you buy this pack, you'll also be able to watch along as well. So, however, let me get this open. So, before I tell you what this tastes like, while I fight the plastic to get it off, let me give you some background information about not just the distillery and the history of it and how it ties in with Robert Burns, but also the makeup of this particular bottling.
The Lochlea Distillery is a conversion of the farm buildings at Lochlea Farm, situated 8 miles south of Kilmarnock, and at which the world-famous Scottish writer and poet Robert Burns lived and worked from 1777 to 1784. Plans for a distillery by the current owner Neil McGeoch were approved in 2014 and whisky production commenced in August 2018. Malcolm Rennie, who'd previously been distillery manager at the likes of Bruichladdich, Ardbeg, Kilchoman and Annandale, initially worked with Neil as a consultant before coming on board full-time to oversee the birth of the whisky. However, he then left to join the rebirth of the Rosebank distillery in October 2021 and was replaced by John Campbell, who had previously been the distillery manager at Laphroaig for 16 years. The distillery is another new whisky venture who are producing a grain-to-glass spirit. They grow their own barley in fields literally over the road and have their own water source. The bottle itself features embossing referencing the tyre tracks that surround the farm as well. Lochlea Cask Strength Batch 1 is, as the name suggests, the first cask strength release from the distillery, which will become an annual release of limited edition bottlings. John and his team selected whiskies maturing in first fill, ex-Bourbon and Oloroso Sherry casks that work particularly well at a higher strength, marrying them together to create a batch of 15,000 bottles available worldwide at an ABV of 60.1%.
So, that is what we are looking at. So we have first fill bourbon barrels and Oloroso Sherry casks at a cask strength of 60.1%. Now, I obviously don't want too much because I want to save it for the tasting. This is what you call planning ahead. It's planning ahead for a year in advance to do a tasting event. And I've also got some water just in case I feel it needs it. Really like this dark packaging as well. One of the things I've really enjoyed about Lochlea is the bottle looks great, and the different colours of the packaging actually really stands out on the shelf if you've got them all side by side. Looking forward to this. I did wonder what a cask strength would be like. I think actually in one of my reviews of one of the seasonals, I sort of said I'd love to know what this is like at a cask strength to see where it's going. And what became absolutely apparent, and what I'd already kind of picked up on even from an early stage, was there is a Lochlea character already. There is an identity to this, very much kind of cereal based. And as I keep saying through all of them, it's like standing in fields of grain. So I'm really hoping that this will come through. Bourbon casks particularly seem to work really well, having gone through all the seasonal editions side by side. Bourbon casks in particular, that lighter, creamier touch does seem to work well with what's coming through the new make spirit, this barley feel in particular, but this fresh barley feel, this fresh cereal note that seems to come through. Bourbon casks really accentuate that. So I'll be really intrigued to see what this is like at a cask strength. So you've seen me just open the bottle. So this is absolutely my first time having it. Right, on the nose. Right, so my phone, which I'm recording on, completely ran out of storage. It's chock full of photos from various holidays and things like that that I've not done anything with. So it packed up, and I have absolutely no idea where it would have cut out in terms of the preamble that I was doing. So what I will do, having cleared a load of space off, is start at the start, which was the nosing. So the nose on here was, and still is, pleasantly soft, even with that 60%, even with what is naturally quite a light type of whiskey anyway. The fear is that the high ABV was going to potentially overpower that that kind of light, delicate, grainy, cereally character, and it would just become a little bit, say, too hot on the nose. But here, it still comes through. There is a slight acetate edge of the alcohol, but it's not acrid, it's not unpleasant, it actually works really nicely. There's almost a hint of like a dry white wine in there as well. That bourbon element is definitely at the forefront. The sherry is sort of more in the background. It does give a slight softness. I do get a slight hint of, not raisins, but sultanas very much in the background. You do get that kind of like creamy vanilla note, which is coming from those bourbon casks. But the nose is incredibly pleasant and light and fresh, and again, very spring-like. Really, really pleasant on the nose. Right, let's see where we're on the palate. Now, as it came into my mouth straight away, I got a lovely, creamy, Cheerio type of feel to it. Again, that Lochlea identity is absolutely there. And as with the nose, that high ABV is prevalent, it's up front, but it's not overpowering. There's a lovely, rich texture to it as well. Slightly oily, slightly creamy, really coats the mouth and actually lingers quite a bit on the finish as well. You get a bit more of that sherry element coming through now. You get more of the kind of that berry note, that kind of, again, not quite raisins, more like sultanas. Very much a bread and butter feel here, a bread and butter pudding feel here. Less so on that kind of like charred edge that you might get on a bread and butter pudding that's been cooked in the oven. More that kind of like sultanas, raisins, custard, soft bread. That cereal note again really comes through. Lochlea's identity shines through all of their bottlings, and it continues to do so here. Now, I am going to add water to it, but it doesn't necessarily need it, which is actually a nice surprise, because again, my fear was that the ABV would be slightly dominating, but it does work really, really well. I love the nose on this. It's really inviting, but it has a lot to it. That texture, that rich, silky, coating texture, even with the alcohol. It's really, really surprising me how balanced this is. Right, let's see what it is. So I've only got a little bit left because I'm trying to save this for the tasting. But let me put a couple of drops in and let's just loosen it up a little bit. Now we get more of that grain character coming through. that cereal note, that kind of barley, but then also fields of wheat and corn and everything else that's going on there. It really loosens it out. It becomes, there's a touch of a farmy note in there. I don't know if that's just my nose, but having added water to it, I'm now getting a slight hint of kind of farmyards. Not massively kind of like they've just covered the fields in fertilizer, but there very much is just kind of right in the background, this little whiff of kind of farm as well as fields. Now that might just be me. It might be the glass. I don't know, but there's definitely something else there. And I'm wondering whether that's a little bit more of that Oloroso Sherry coming in. I think some people might sort of nose this, particularly with water added, and go, "Oh, there's a touch of sulfur on it." You know, Jim Murray, even though, you know, he whose name shall not be spoken or whatever it is, Jim Murray went off on one about sulfur like many years ago, and it's the sort of thing that it's sort of there in the background, but sulfur's unpleasant, and this isn't unpleasant. It works really, really well, but it's this additional dimension of something. Almost like the slightly vegetal note you get on a Pinot Noir wine. But it really kind of changes it and works really well. How interesting. Again, it might just be me. Anyway, palate. Oh, wow. Just a drop of water. The the creaminess turns into like a custardy note. There's a lovely vanilla feel going on here. But I'm getting berries. This really is that kind of like unctuous inside of that bread and butter pudding. We've got bread that's been soaked in custard, a rich, proper vanilla custard as well. We've got lovely fruit notes going on. We've got a touch of like strawberries coming through here as well. It's sort of, you know, that bread and butter pudding, but you've added strawberries as well. Maybe like dried strawberries that have then sort of semi-melted while it's been baking. A lovely fruitiness going on. Really soft, really inviting. Oh, now do I prefer it with water? There's a lot more going on in here in terms of the fruitiness, but I really like what it was doing at cask strength. Oh, yes. Oh, wow. That is superb. Really, really impressed with that. So relieved. No, relieved's the wrong word, because it's not like I was expecting it to be a disappointment, but I'm really pleased that cask strength Lochlea is still absolutely fantastic and fits in brilliantly with the rest of the range. John and his team are doing a fantastic job. I'm so impressed with what Lochlea are doing at such a young age. This is a fantastic representation. Now, unfortunately, the allocation that I got and received has already gone. I don't have any available for sale unless I can get my hands on some more, which is unlikely considering it's got the number 1 on the label, so every bugger's going to want it. Whether they drink that or not is another matter entirely. But I do have these available, not many, but I do have the first year's releases. And the rest of this will be used in an equivalent tasting next year, once we have the second crop of the seasonal editions and also anything else that comes out, so we can get a nice box of 6. And if I can get John to join us again, that would be absolutely fantastic. If not, Patrick was brilliant for the rest of the tasting as well, so we'd be more than happy to have him on board. Anyway, so if you can get your hands on a bottle, and there aren't that many worldwide, I highly recommend it. $64.99 is the RRP, and I think that's actually a really good price for what is a batch 1 cask strength bottling. It's fantastic. If you're a fan of Lochlea, get your hands on it. If you like light, creamy, easy drinking whiskies with lots of complexity and a good identity to it, get your hands on this. It's an absolute doozy, and I can't wait to see what else they're bringing out in the future. So that is me done. I shall see you at the next video. Cheers.